Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Gunabhimani no Deva Sargadishvasya Yadbhayat Vartante Nuyugam Yeshan Vasaitat Characharam. Gunabhimani no deva sargadishvasya yadbhayat vartante nu yugam yesham vasayetach characharam. Synonyms: guna, the modes of material nature; abhimanina, in charge of; deva, the demigods; sarga adishu, in the matter of creation and so on; asya, of this world; yat, bhayat, out of fear of whom; vartante, carry out functions; anuyugam, according to the yugas; yesham, of whom; vashe, under the control; etat, this; characharam, everything animate and inanimate. Translation: out of fear of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the directing demigods in charge of the modes of material nature carry out the functions of creation, maintenance, and destruction. Everything animate and inanimate within this material world is under their control. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The three modes of material nature, namely goodness, passion, ignorance, are under the control of three deities: Brahma, Vishnu, and Lord Shiva. Lord Vishnu is in charge of the mode of goodness, Lord Brahma is in charge of the mode of passion, and Lord Shiva is in charge of the mode of ignorance. Similarly, there are many other demigods in charge of the air department, the water department, the cloud department, etc. Just as the government has many different departments, so within this material world, the government of the Supreme Lord has many departments, and all these departments function in proper order out of fear of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Demigods are undoubtedly controlling all matter, animate and inanimate, within this universe, but above them, the Supreme Controller is the Personality of Godhead. Therefore, in the Brahma Samhita, it is said, Ishvara Parama Krishna. Undoubtedly, there are many controllers in the departmental management of this universe, but the supreme controller is Krishna. There are two kinds of dissolutions. One kind of dissolution takes place when Brahma goes to sleep during his night, and the final dissolution takes place when Brahma dies. As long as Brahma does not die, creation, maintenance, and destruction are actuated by different demigods under the superintendence of the Supreme Lord. And text 45. Sunanto nantakara kalo nadiradi krid avyaya janam janena janayan marayan mrityu nantakam. Sunanto nantaka karakalo nadir adi krid avyaya janam janena janayan marayan mrityu nantakam. Saha, that; ananta, endless; antakara, destroyer; kala, time; anadi, without beginning; adikrit, the creator; avyaya, not liable to change; janam, persons; janena, by persons; janayan, creating; marayan, destroying; Mrityuna by death, Antakam, the Lord of death. Translation: the eternal time factor has no beginning and no end. It is the representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the maker of the criminal world. It brings about the end of the phenomenal world. It carries on the work of creation by bringing one individual. Let me read that again. It brings about the end of the phenomenal world. It carries on the work of creation by bringing one individual into existence from another. And likewise, it dissolves the universe by destroying even the Lord of Death, Yamaraj. Excuse me. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. By the influence of eternal time, which is the representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Father begets a Son, and the Father dies by the influence of cruel death. But by time's influence, even the Lord of cruel death is killed. In other words, all the demigods within the material world are temporary, like ourselves. Our lives last for 100 years at the most. And similarly, although their lives may last for millions and billions of years, the demigods are not eternal. No one can live within this material world eternally. The phenomenal world is created, maintained, and destroyed by the finger signal of the Supreme Personality or Godhead. Therefore, a devotee does not desire anything in this material world. Let me repeat. The phenomenal world is created, maintained, and destroyed by the finger signal of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, a devotee does not desire anything in this material world. A devotee desires only to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This servitude exists eternally. The Lord exists eternally. His servitor exists eternally. And the service exists eternally. Beautiful. So the servitude exists eternally. The Lord exists eternally. His servitor exists eternally. And the service exists eternally. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the third canto, 29th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Explanation of Devotional Service by Lord Kapila. So let us, excuse me, let us pay our obeisances to Sri Gurudev and the Supreme Lord and pray for clarity to understand the hidden workings of creation so that our devotion matures. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. A very good Sunday morning to you all. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're reading from Canto 3, Chapter 29, and we're reading texts 44 and 45. And the title for this chapter is the Explanation of Devotional Service by Lord Kapiladev. So, Devahuti, Kapila's mother, asked him questions, and that's what we've been discussing over the last few months. Kapiladev asks sorry, Devahuti, Mother Devahuti asked Lord Kapiladev questions about the nature of matter, the spirit, and the ultimate reality, you know. So she has all of these questions, which Lord Kapiladev is systematically explaining. So in the previous verses, the previous verses, Kapiladev describes Prakriti, the material nature, the living entity or the Jiva, and Bhagavan, right, the Supreme, and their interplay. Right, those were the texts from text 1 through text 36, roughly. And then he begins to explain how Prakriti is managed by the divine agencies, right? The demigods and so on. And so we're now talking through text 44 and 45, which is in the middle of that explanation. So Kapiladev is explaining this material machinery. In other words, the demigods who administer the modes of material nature and the role of time, right? To show that these controllers are temporary, right? They're just instruments of the Supreme. So this basically is setting the stage. In this case, he's addressing Mother Devahuti's questions and addressing, speaking to Mother Devahuti, who's taken the position of a student. But this is knowledge that is being imparted to the general population, like us, right? Who are trying to comprehend and understand what this life is all about, or what are we all about, what is the Supreme all about, what is this external, environment that we live about, what's it all about? And all these interactions that we're having and how we're being thrown in different directions, up, down, sideways, all the time by the modes of material nature. So this is Kapiladev is actually setting the stage to let us know that as human beings, we should not be misled into worshipping the temporary, right? So the whole principle here is don't worship the temporary, anything that is temporary. Don't fall for that. Instead, go for something that is permanent. And that permanent is the ultimate shelter of the Lord, right? And how is that? Through devotional service. Devotional service, as Prabhupada mentioned in his purport in the last line or the last sentence of text 45, saying service is eternal, right? It's both the means and the end. The reason why we chant and the reason why we want to engage in devotional service is not to attain moksha. That's not how a pure devotee thinks. The pure devotee is engaging in spontaneous devotional service, right? So the chanting is happening with the intent that it is not for moksha or liberation, but to be engaged in spontaneous and pure devotional service, loving devotional service that is devoid of all of the awe and reverence. As we see, even devotional service, and Lord Kapiladev explains this as we go through these verses, we'll discuss this more. Even devotional service can be, since we're constantly impacted by the modes of material nature, it doesn't mean that devotional service is done only when we become a pure devotee, right? That's technically infeasible for us, especially being a part of this material world. So Kapiladev is very clearly and making it simpler and easier for us as well, saying that even in the mode of ignorance, in the tamas mode, one can still engage in devotional service, right? Be it in anger, with violence, but still being able to engage to some limited form of devotional service. Similarly, in the mode of passion, there may be pride, there may be envy, there may be other ulterior motives, but the individual can still engage in devotional service, even in the mode of passion. And then in the mode of goodness, of course. But that's also, with awe and respect, right? And it is something out of duty, devotional service that is done out of duty. Oh, I have to do this, I have to do this, and therefore I'm engaging in devotion service. But for a pure devotee who transcends all of these modes, it is very plain and simple. It is just spontaneous, pure, loving devotional service. That's the beauty. And Kapila Dev is making that step by step apparent to us through these verses, through these explanations to Mother Devahuti. So that's the prelude of what's coming in these verses and what Lord Kapila Dev is talking about. Think about, a multinational company, right, in the corporate world, since most of you are here in Naperville are working. Sometimes most of you are also both husband and wife devotees are working. So you can relate to a corporate example where you have, there's the CEO and you have, you have multiple departments, multiple groups, right? Whether it is finance or operations or marketing or logistics, whatever it is, right? You have multiple departments. And for each of these departments, we have heads, right? A department head or a functional head. We have line and staff managers, right? And each one has their own domain and each one has their own area of responsibility, right? But they're all dovetailing just like we do, even in the temple. Premananda Mataji is the temple president, and she has all of these various operational and functional departments, and each of them has their own chairperson, right? But all of these departments have to dovetail into the overall objective of the temple. So, as the temple president, Premananda Mataji will set strategy, and she sets strategy so that each of these individual departments then can set their individual strategies to dovetail into the overall strategy for the temple, right? Similarly, Krishna he's the supreme controller. He has all of this creation under him. And he has all of these various demigods who are delegates in terms of the administrative responsibilities that they have. And they're empowered. So they have the power to do certain things, right? So there are each of these demigods who have their areas of responsibility, and they all have the responsibility to also dovetail back into the will or the supreme will of Krishna, Lord Krishna, who is the supreme controller, Ishvara Parama Krishna, right? So that is the basic understanding. So Kapiladev has been, trying to explain that the pure devotee, like I said, is not motivated by any of these fruits or moksha even, right? But instead, he's also in the previous verses, he's been talking about samadarshana, right? Where he's talking about being able to see Krishna in every living entity, in every piece, every part and parcel of creation. And it resonated very strongly with me as well. I mean, initially I was thinking samadarshana in terms of the verses that we've read in the Bhagavad Gita. The way my understanding, my limited understanding, was more about, being able to see, the super soul residing in each of these living entities. But I didn't realize as much, and I didn't connect the dots as much. Samadarshana is that and more, meaning all of this creation that is around us is Krishna. It's a part of Him, His manifestation that we fail to see in day-to-day life. We're so busy running around and chasing our tails, and we're so caught up in this rat race that we don't just take that moment to even think or even acknowledge that all of this beauty around us, all of that's given to us in various forms, in various quantities, in various ways. It's all mercy, right? This is all coming from Krishna, and this is Krishna's beauty, his manifestation. We spend more time, I can speak for myself, as to why this is not right, that's not right, complaining about this, complaining about that, criticizing this, criticizing that. Very little time spent in terms of being able to just hit that pause button and step back and think, Krishna is in everything. So, thus, when we now are talking about these texts, text 44 and 45, we're not hearing so much about bhakti per se, which is going to be getting, where Lord Kapila is going to be getting into that in much greater detail in the following, subsequent chapters and cantos. But he's talking to us about the stage upon which we must act. Now, what are those two things, right? In these two verses, he's talked about basically the demigods are administrators, right? He he talks about they being administrators, meaning that they're not absolute. They're instruments, but they're not absolute. And the second thing he talks about is in text 45 is about time. Time being the ultimate destroyer, right? It destroys everything. So Kapilidev has systematically started out, like I said, by explaining Sankhya Yoga, then about Prakriti, right, about the material energy. Then he talks about the Ashtanga Yoga, the different stages by which one can meditate on the forms of the Lord, and very beautifully described. And then he gets into Dhyana Yoga as to how one can constantly, think about Krishna, and ultimately Bhakti Yoga. So that's what he's setting the stage on which Bhakti must act. So he's very systematically bringing this whole, imparting this knowledge to Mother Devahuti. Now, how many of you have felt confused? And I'm sure, because I know coming from India, there's so many different gods, so many different demigods that we are exposed to. So, we're told, hey, worship this god for this god for that, right? And all in the name of religiosity, right? Go to the temple, and when you go to the temple, you have various gods, because the temples are also trying to please various factions or various, um, you know, um, categories of people coming in, and they all have their own inclinations and their interests as well. Someone is coming for, help me put food on the table. Someone is coming for, asking the Lord's for maybe power, maybe winning an election, or maybe winning, the lottery, or, doing well in studies, or, wanting, as Prabhupada says, getting a better spouse, or even finding a spouse for that matter, right? So there's a plethora of demigods, a multitude of demigods. And we're told that there are over 33 crore demigods, according to, the Hindu religion, which in itself is a misnomer. But that's a different topic for a different day, right? So the question is anyone even stopping to think whether worshipping any of these demigods is valid, right? And so, gunabhimaninu deva, right? And so, what the translation is saying here is that out of fear for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the directing demigods are in charge of the modes of material nature. And then they are carrying out their functions of creation, maintenance, and destruction under and all of this is under their control. In other words, Krishna has empowered them to do it. But we need to understand, as Kapila Dev is explaining, that this means that the demigods themselves are not absolute, but they are instruments, that they are empowered instruments that are getting and deriving their powers from the Supreme Lord, including Lord Brahma, who is, that's why he is noted as the secondary creator. He's not the creator, but the secondary creator of this universe. Similarly, there are multiple Brahmas for the multiple universes, but they're all acting and are empowered to start this whole motion of creation under the power and the empowerment of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Excuse me. So Lord Kapiladev is also saying that each of these demigods, right, they're cosmic functionaries, so to speak. They are functioning in the cosmic space within their areas, their domains, or their spheres, right? So whether it is modes of passion, um, sorry, in the sphere of passion and goodness and in destruction, right? So you have Brahma doing what he does in the mode of and for he's represented as the Lord of Passion. Similarly, Shiva for destruction and Vishnu for goodness. But if they deviated from what they are supposed to do, then it would create a lot of chaos, right? For instance, when Lord Brahma tried to steal the cowherd boys, the Gopas, he was trying to challenge the power of this little boy, Krishna, not understanding who he really was and the extent of his power. And we know how that played out, right? And finally, Lord Brahma, exalted as he is, came down to his knees and begged for forgiveness, offered beautiful prayers, excuse me, and, Krishna forgave him. So it can happen even to exalted demigods, exalted personalities who can make mistakes. Similarly, Lord Indra, the king of heaven, and he sent the Samvartaka clouds as we know it, right? Just to show his power. Who is this little boy who's telling all of the Rajavasis not to, worship me and pay, their respects to me, and they want to worship. He's telling them to worship the Govardhan hill, but I am the king of heaven, right? And Lord Indra is an exalted personality. He is a superlative, exalted personality. To be in that position takes a lot. But even he, in this pastime, made a mistake, a grave mistake. He sent the Samvartaka clouds to a point, that he was literally trying to destroy, eliminate, and drown the Rajavasis and everything that lived in that area, right? And we know how that pastime played out as well. So, in practical, in another practical example would be, day-to-day life would be, it's like the surgeon and the surgical knife. Just imagine the surgeon is in the middle of the surgery and the surgical knife suddenly comes to life, the knife coming to life, and decides to do something on its own. And it wants to dance on the patient and cut this way and cut that way, God forbid. But if that were to happen, it would be a complete disaster. So in this case, the surgeon being the Supreme Personality, the Supreme Controller, and the knife being the demigod. So that when trickle it down all the way to us, we are all nimitta matrams, right? So we are instruments, and we should regard ourselves as instruments in terms of being able to serve the Lord and dovetailing our services, engaging our senses with the sense objects in a way that is in service to the Lord, to please the Lord. That should be the fundamental principle, always. And as instruments, then we are doing the right thing, right? We are not empowered because even we have certain powers, right? We can talk, we can walk, we can sit, we can stand, right? We can motivate people. We can impact others' behaviors, right? We can even impact cultures for that matter over a period of time, as we've seen with great leaders. But if we don't do it with the right consciousness, with the right knowledge that we are nothing but instruments, and if we're not doing it in a way that is not pleasing to Krishna, no matter what it is, whether it is at work, whether we're cooking, whether we're, bringing up a family, engaging with others, if we're not doing it in a way that is pleasing to Krishna, then it is hopeless. Then it is only directed towards ourselves. And keeping ourselves in the center is the sure shot way of bringing us back to this material world or even take us down into the netherworlds. Right. And that's the basic principle that we hear with every lecture, with every page that we read in the Srimad Bhagavatam in the scriptures given to us by our preceptors. So again, just to stress the authority, okay, so the demigods that must function with obedience, and that their authority is instrumental. It's not absolute. Right. So just moving on to the next text. Sanananto Nantakara Kalo Anadhirkrid Avyaya Janam Janena Janayan Marayan Mrityunantakam. Right? By the influence of eternal time, again, by the influence of eternal time, which is a representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Father begets the Son, and the Father dies by the influence of cruel death. And that's what Prabhupada is saying. But by the time's influence, even the Lord of cruel death is killed. In other words, all the demigods within the material world are temporary. They're temporary, just like ourselves. So here Kapiladev is introducing time. Sananta Antakara Kala. Right? So he's introducing time as this cosmic agency that has no beginning, no end, and it basically exposes everybody and everything in this material universe to all of these modes, which, with the combination of time, destroy everything. Everything has, in our lifetimes, there is a finite beginning and finite end. But there is this concept of absolute time. Time I am, Krishna says, which is also a representative of Krishna. Kalo Asmi. Time I am, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita. So time is not separate, but it is Krishna's delegated feature. Even time is acting under his influence. So it's the demigods, and now Kapila Dev is also talking about time. He says even time is acting under the guidance of the Supreme Lord. So time is the instrument by which, okay, the key operative word here is instrument again. Time, like the demigods, time is the instrument by which births, deaths, transitions, all of these occur, right? It operates the creation, it operates the destruction. But even Yamaraj, the god of death, even Yamaraj is subject to time. Even Lord Brahma, right? 311 trillion years. I mean, that's his lifespan. But even that is subject to a finite start and a finite end for Lord Brahma, after which there's complete dissolution, and then creation starts all over again. And there's Lord Brahma again taking birth again on the navel of Lord Vishnu. So therefore, nobody in this material universe is exempt from, you know, taking birth and then being destroyed at some point in time. Everything within the material existence is temporary. And that's what we need to understand, that everything is temporary. So Lord Kapaladev is making it very clear. Not only all of this is very temporary, including the demigods, by the influence of time, which is also under the influence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, why would we, human beings, invest in something that is temporary, something that is going to be gone? It is here today and gone tomorrow. So why would we invest in something that is temporary? Instead, invest in something that is eternal. And what is that? Devotional service. Because this devotional service, as Krishna says even in the Bhagavad Gita, the devotional service, any service done for him, to please him, to serve him, will always remain. That account is just growing and growing and growing and growing, whether it is this lifetime or the next lifetime or the lifetime after. It's only going to get better and better and better, sweeter and sweeter and sweeter, because Krishna is keeping track of all of that devotional service, which we don't and we cannot. And we're not supposed to. I mean, that's not the intent. The intent is to be able to please Krishna. So if we feel small or if we feel powerless, we're not alone, because everybody has to pay their obeisances to time, including Lord Brahma. But if we seek refuge in the Supreme Lord, He's the absolute, right? That refuge is beyond time, because Krishna is eternal. Like I said, time is also a part and parcel and acting under the supervision of the Supreme Lord, Ishvara Parama Krishna. And we see Lord Indra, I mean, through the pastimes that we hear and read in the Srimad Bhagavatam, there are so many examples of this. What to speak of us? We're totally insignificant. Where the Srimad Bhagavatam is talking about such exalted personalities like Lord Brahma, Lord Indra, and so many others, so many others. And even their positions have come and gone. They've made mistakes, they learn from their mistakes. And some of these are, mistakes that even make us wonder, how could someone like a Lord Brahma challenge Krishna? Or how could Lord Indra, for sake of a Parijata, have a fight with Krishna? How is that even possible? Everything is coming from Krishna. And how did he even forget that it's coming from Krishna to a point that he thinks that it's mine, right? Another example that comes to mind is also the Ashwamedh Yagya, which King Prithu performs, right? The horse sacrifice. And when it comes to the very last horse that would help him complete the Yagya, Lord Indra, he's become so envious by that point in time that he becomes, through his the powers that he has, he becomes invisible and he steals the horse, the last horse that is to be sacrificed from the sacrificial altar. Not just once, but twice. He steals it, runs away with it, and the son of King Prithu chases him, finds out from Atreya Muni, who says, "Hey, look, this is what Lord Indra is trying to do. Go get him." And Lord Indra then manifests himself in ascetic clothes, and so the son of King Prithu is basically thinking, "Oh my God, how can I offend somebody? How can I even, harm such a person?" And he comes back. But then he is sent back again, by the sages who say, "No, you must go and take care of this. Bring the horse back." And finally he chases. He gets very angry and he chases the son of King Prithu and chases Lord Indra, and Indra is running. He's fleeing Lord Indra is fleeing. Imagine with everything, all the powers that he has, he's fleeing. And then finally the horse comes back. And this happens twice. And finally, the horse comes back, and King Prithu is able to complete the sacrifice. Lord Vishnu is there, and all of the various personalities, the supreme, the highly elevated personalities are there in the presence of Krishna, who is the ultimate benefactor, and he's also the beneficiary of all of these sacrifices. So that's how this all plays out, and this knowledge that is being imparted to us is that no one in this material world, not even Lord Indra or Lord Brahma, exalted as they are bereft or exempt from the action of time and also the overall control of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And again, Krishna is not standing there with a stick and saying, I'm being egoistic and I want to try and control you. No, that's not what he's trying to do. He is the supreme controller. Everything is coming from him. And he's doing it lovingly. It's not like, one of our school teachers standing with a stick and saying, stand on the bench. You've got to do this, or you have imposition. You have to. None of that, right? Krishna is so loving and he's so merciful, and we need to get ourselves to align, in that loving exchange. And when that happens, it brings us so much closer towards him. And in that sense, we are allowing ourselves to surrender and be controlled. So control has, in our perspective, I mean, in our, I would say it would have a negative connotation in our day-to-day lives in this modern world. Control is all about, saying you have to do this and you have to do that. But here we're talking about control in the form, it's as an exchange of love, being able to surrender without having to restrict ourselves and, close our hearts, but instead open our hearts to do something that we want to do for the pleasure of Krishna. And that's what Kapila is trying to bring us to that point, to say, all of these things are good, but they're not good enough in terms of doing this yoga and that yoga. But he's bringing us to a point where he's saying, surrender to the Lord with love. Then you will see how you can automatically, you don't even have to try, you're automatically, spontaneously aligning in pleasing Krishna and serving Krishna, not with awe and reverence, but beyond that, with love, with love. And that's what we all need to aspire. Doing everything we can by keeping Krishna in the center. And this is something that we need to constantly remind ourselves, because the moods are acting on us all the time. And we're bringing a lot of baggage from all the millions of lifetimes with us. So it becomes very cloudy, right? And we're not able to see very clearly. So what we're seeing is only what we can see in front of us, maybe 6 inches away from us. What Kapila is saying is that behind all, or beyond this cloud, so to speak, there is Krishna, who's controlling all the demigods, and the demigods who have their powers are then controlling everything that's happening in this material world. But we should not be misled by that. That, the demigods are the ultimate. We need to look at what's happening even beyond. So I think we spoke at considerable length here. Um, we need to understand that all of these things that we go through in life, whether it is a reversal in life, whether it is something good, all of these things are being given to us for a reason. All right. So devotee is thinking, it could have been a lot worse, and it is also giving me an opportunity to be able to think of Krishna, remember Krishna, and be able to see, what Krishna is trying to tell me. It could be something to purify me, something to help remove some of those attachments that I have. It could be pride. It could be my attraction to wealth or fame or whatever it is, right? Those are things that are not required for us. And definitely are obstacles in the path of devotion. So Krishna provides, he's merciful. So he's providing these opportunities for us to be able to go through it. And while we're going through it, know that Krishna is there holding us carefully so that if we start to fall even further, then he's able to catch us, hold us, and bring us back. But it is for us to realize that Krishna is there with us. And these things are happening for that reason, for us to help, pause, introspect, and do things differently, not repeat the same thing over and over and over again. And that would be, the formal definition of insanity, which the material world is practically filled with, right? This insanity all around us and all within us as well. So we need to get out of that mode. And that's what Kapila is repeatedly, systematically explaining. And he's doing this in such a way that it becomes simpler for us to understand by putting these things in perspective and how we can actually get to the stage of serving Krishna the way it should, the way we should. So a good exercise for us would be, to just sit back and think, what are those attachments that are preventing us from getting attached to Krishna? What are the attachments in this material world? And, so there has to be a systematic detachment, as Kapiladev puts it very nicely, as a systematic detachment of all of these unwanted things while we are attaching ourselves to Krishna. Because just mere detachment is not going to sustain in the long run. You could do it for a day, you could do it for a month, you could do it for a year, but then sooner or later, it's going to come back and we're going to fall back into that vicious cycle. Whereas if we invest our time and our mind and our senses and our intelligence in attaching ourselves to those things that please Krishna, Krishna in turn is reciprocating, right? So he has, Guru Maharaj was explaining, His Holiness Ramapad Swami was explaining the other day, how Krishna decorates his devotees. When we engage in loving devotional service, Krishna is so merciful that he decorates us with beautiful qualities. Beautiful qualities. And those qualities are so pleasing, of course, to Krishna, but then they're so pleasing to everybody else as well. And it's basically, a generative cycle where others are also inspired and, they want to engage in devotional service as well. So the whole environment, the atmosphere then becomes conducive to performing our devotional service to Krishna. Okay, so once again, takeaways would be the demigods, they are nothing but they're departmental leaders or agents, right? They're managing nature's functions under the supreme personality's sanction, right? So that is their function. Time, it's a great regulator, right? It doesn't have a beginning, it doesn't have an end, but it is instrumental, right? And it is subject to everybody in this material universe, even the god of death, even Yamaraj, right? So everything in this material realm is transient or it is temporary. And it is subject to higher laws, right? So there are higher laws that everything has to follow. And therefore, we need to focus our efforts in devotion to the Supreme Lord, not to this temporary, material universe and, these transient transient controllers being the demigods, right? And even that's also, in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, abandon all forms of religion so that there's no confusion there. You don't have to go after this and this and this and that and get completely confused. And when things don't go right, we get all, messed up in the head and we get so depressed, we get violent, we get, different forms, manifestation of stress leads to other things. But rather, Krishna is giving, have that vyavasayatmika buddhir, right? Have that resolute, fixed consciousness in understanding that my service is the service to the Supreme Personality. By doing that, everything else is taken care of. When I'm in the shelter of the Supreme Lord, I have all the protection. I don't have to worry about anything else. I don't have to ask for anything else. I don't have to ask, help me with this or help me with that. Not required. The moment I apply myself so that I'm always in the shelter of the Supreme Personality, automatically I have complete protection of the Supreme Lord in every possible way, in life and in death. Not just in life, but in death as well. Krishna is there to take care of us, to make sure that we're getting closer to Him, whether it's in this lifetime or next lifetime, or maybe there's no more lifetimes for us. Krishna is giving us that gift, that causeless mercy that He gives. Look at Prahlad Maharaj, okay? In closing, I'd like to talk about just briefly, the things that you already know, but just put things in perspective. Prahlad was a little boy and he was being harassed by his own father, who was a demon that everybody in this material universe was shuddering and shaking and shivering, just by the movement of his eyebrow, the way it's described, including Lord Indra and all of the devatas, right? They were having such a hard time. And here was Prahlad Maharaj. Prahlad Maharaj was being harassed to a point that he was being put to death in multiple ways on a daily basis. But there was not even a single sign of trepidation or fear or stress on little boy Prahlad. And we're talking about life, right? Life, the danger of being killed every single day. And in the most horrible ways one can imagine or not even imagine, for that matter. Why? Because Prahlad was completely absorbed in thinking about the Supreme Personality of Godhead and thinking about Krishna. So he was constantly in the shelter of Krishna. So Krishna was giving him that protection. So it shows that when you have that protection, that is something that is eternal. That is something that is even higher than the highest in our material realm. So therefore, that devotion protected Prahlad even from the highest in the material world at that point in time, which was his own father, which was Hiranyakashipu. And so what happened? Hiranyakashipu was killed. By whom? By the Supreme Personality in the form of Lord Narasimha. Right? So there was an end put to that. There was no more Hiranyakashipu. Done. Chapter closed. So it very clearly demonstrates to us the example that devotion to the Supreme and the Supreme being eternal is higher than everything else. Everything else can come and go. The Supreme stays. It's eternal. And therefore, our devotional service is also eternal, as Srila Prabhupada so beautifully puts it. So beautifully he puts it. It is eternal. So it is stronger than time. It is stronger than the power of the demigods, even, for that matter. So with that, let's see if there's any discussion. I know I've been talking for a while here. I hope there was something that made sense to you. And if you have any questions, any comments, please feel free. We can spend a few minutes.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Thank you so much for such a beautiful Bhagavatam class this morning. Every word you are speaking is like nectar flowing from each and every word. And I somehow feel I only get hooked to very few speakers, Prabhu, and you are one of them. And you always take me to a different world when I hear to you, whether it is a kirtan or it's a Bhagavatam class, you just take me to a different realm. So,
We're just instruments, Prabhu. We're just instruments. It's mercy coming down. That's it. That's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. I really like the point you were saying that the Prakriti is being controlled. I mean, is being controlled by different demigods and how, I mean, you can, how you were able to correlate to the current uh, world, how it functions in every industry, right? And how we can utilize our senses and engage them in the service of Lord. Whatever we do in our day-to-day lives, just put Krishna in the center, and just do your service, do due diligence, just like dovetailing everything in the service of Lord, which can ultimate fulfill the urge of the soul, right? So I really like those points, bro. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Yeah, I mean, this is not just outward but inward too. This is
Right.
purification for me, and it's a good lesson for me as well. So this just reinforces. So thank you, Prabhu. Thank you so much. I think we're good at this point, so I'm going to close for now. But enjoy the rest of your week in Krishna consciousness. Thank you very much. Vansha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyevacha patitānāṁ Vaishnavebhyo
Srila
Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Guru Maharaj ki jai.